This content is brought to you in association with my buddies over at Jam Jam Cards UK. You can find the links to the eBay store and the Facebook page in the description. Hello Duelists, it's Joe here from Rufioh. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time here, welcome aboard. You should definitely hit subscribe and the notification bell before we go any further and you realise how fucking garbage this content is. But if this is not your first time on the channel, welcome back. For today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Dino deck list that I took to YCS London and did absolutely fucking horrendous with. I did, however, want to share this with you to show the changes that I've made, talk a little bit about the matchups and why I did so badly, and I don't think it was down to the deck, to be entirely honest. More a case of some unfortunate matchups that happen to actually just directly counter exactly what I'm trying to do. But I will be continuing with the deck for a little while going forward and having some fun with this. It is, of course, go second and try and flatten your opponent as quickly as possible. Now, before we get stuck into the video, if you are looking for any Yu-Gi-Oh singles, check out the channel sponsors, Jam Jam Cards UK. Link in the description. Use the code Rufioh15 for 15% off their eBay store. But I digress. Let's get stuck in to the deck profile. So here it is, Duelists, the list I took to YCS London and will be taken to Nottingham this coming weekend at the time of recording the video. Now there are definitely a couple of things I would have changed. Unfortunately my matchups were awful. I'll go through those at the end and talk about why the results went the way they did, what the reasons were. If you want a little bit more information on that, of course there will be some bits in that YCS mini vlog which will be out at some point. I don't know whether it's going to be out by the time this drops or shortly afterwards. Now, there was definitely a couple of meta calls that I made in here that were definitely not correct. So we need to go about making sure that that changes going forward. I won't be changing it for the next tournament because I just can't be bothered, and it'll be a little while before I play another event, probably national, so I imagine the format will have changed by then. But for right now, there's a couple of changes I'd recommend about things that did and didn't work well for me and all of those things that I will go through during the video. But let's get stuck into it. Let me also apologise in advance if there is a ton of noise in the background. I live on the world's noisiest street and it is Easter weekend, so everyone is just driving around. Yeah, all that nonsense. Anyway, let's get stuck in. So we start off with double copies of Ultimate Conductor. Tyranno 2 is absolutely correct. There are, again, of course, occasions where the third would be nice, but clogging a multiple of these is just absolutely horrific, so don't do it. A single copy of Dinosaurs Pancratops, we're going second, and yeah, you just need to play it anyway. A single copy of Overtext Coatlas. This was actually just an insurance policy for if I was made to go first. It's just one of those things where it gives you a... more of an omni-negate rather than just setting up Conductor and hoping to book stuff down. There's certain decks where that just doesn't work, so if you're forced to go first, this gives you an option to play. You can just side it out after game one if you need to. Next up, a single copy of Dogoran. This helps you just break boards. Really, really cool card. Helps deal with problematic stuff. Yeah, all of the good stuff that we need. After that, of course, we've got triple copies of Soul Eating Oviraptor. Not much to say here. You need to play 3 copies of it. A single copy of Miscellaneousaurus. It's at 1. If it was at 3, we would play 3. Giant Rex. This felt a little bit better. The last time I played this deck, I was playing a Castira Dino list, and Giant Rex felt kind of shit, to be quite honest with you. But in this build, it feels a lot better. It helps you just make those rank 4s, gives you an extra body, all that good stuff. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Animid Dawn Archosaur. Another one that's not terrible to open. If you've got no other options, it will do the job. Sometimes just normal summon this Papa Baby is great. And again, you can get Oviraptor off there and just go from there. It's pretty cool. Speaking of babies, we have 1, 2, 3 copies of Baby Cerosaurus. I think 3 is just, well, it's objectively correct. You just need to play 3 copies of it. And a single copy of Petit Pteranodon. This was at 3 in my previous build because we were running the True King package in there. We're not running that anymore. We don't need it. There's some argument for maybe still running an extra copy or 2, depending on how you want to play things, because we are playing the scrap package, but I just prefer the clean 3-in-1 ratio, and that worked out quite nicely for me. Next up, we have 2 copies of Scrap Raptor. I definitely don't think that you need more than 2 copies of this. The third is just not necessary. You're going to be summoning it a lot of the time with other stuff anyway, and it just acts as another way to get started if you really don't have another. And lastly, the Scrap Chimera. I don't play the Fridge. I don't like it. It's just another brick we don't need. If I was playing the Go First build, maybe I'd consider it so that we get that slightly higher ceiling. But honestly, this is absolutely fine as it is. Following on from that, we have Nibiru, 3 copies, of course, because, well, yeah, anything else is probably a bit incorrect in this. Unfortunately, this was woeful the whole event. All of my matchups, apart from one, were Sprite. And you just auto-lose with this. This does nothing against Sprite. So my game 1 was constantly something going, oh, look, I have a response that I can't really use because fuck my life. On top of that, we have Ash Blossom, which again is terrible against Sprite. So you can already see how my weekend went woefully, to say the least. Yeah, Triple Ash is just generic hand trap. Theoretically works against everyone, but doesn't necessarily impact everyone in the same way. Clearly, that does round off our monsters. In terms of those main deck monsters, there's probably nothing I'd really change there. Maybe drop the Nibs. Maybe look at something like Droll. That's quite popular at the moment. It's quite powerful. But I'm more concerned about having ways to wipe the board, which is what Nibiru was about. Thinking just give them a big token I don't care about. And of course, the token gives you extra protection if you play Lost World as well. So all of those kind of things to think about. But it didn't work in practice, which is just maybe just unfortunate matchups. That does sometimes happen. We'll know after this next regional whether it's a bad call or not. Next up, we have triple copies of Fossil Dig, of course, onto our spells here. Yeah, you have to play 3 copies of this. It's not negotiable, quite frankly. We then have triple copies of Lost World. This is the one thing I didn't play 3 copies of in my previous build because I didn't feel I needed it. I was playing Diagram and etc, etc. However, I missed it when I wasn't playing it, and it was great whenever it came up. But again, I didn't seem to see this very much, even though I'm playing a 40-card deck, which really pisses me off, but sometimes that's Yu-Gi-Oh for you. Terraforming for our 4th copy, and yet we still didn't see it enough. 2 copies of Double Evolution Pill. 2 is absolutely correct. You do not need a 3rd. You definitely don't want to see this. You just want to search it, and you want a backup copy so that you can get it for the next turn. If you do somehow go past that initial OTK that you're going for. We've got Book of Eclipse. Triple copies of this. This was probably one of the better cards. It's just a good board breaker. Booking everything down so that you can just summon UCT and just do like 5k damage if they've got a full board. It's just really, really cool. Again, just a really, really good card. And it's one of those ones that you can just side out if it's not good for the matchup, but in most matchups, it will do the job. And then finally, to round off our main deck, we have 4 one-ofs. Another board breaker here in Harpy's Feather Duster. I just wanted to back row removal. There's nothing worse than losing to like just a bog standard Floodgate, or your opponent's setting 5 back row and you're like, for fuck's sake, you're playing one of these decks. It just gives you a chance to at least force them to use stuff they don't want to straight away. And that alone might actually be able, allow you to go and break the board. Even if they set up other stuff with it, it might just make it a bit easier. We have Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial's Foolish Burial. It's just great in this deck. You can dump Rex, you can dump a baby so you can set up the Ovi play. You can dump your Miscellaneousaurus if you're desperate to just get it in there so you can banish it for Animadorn and set your place up that way. It just gives you options. It's not terrible to have in here. It just usually works quite well. Monster Reborn. Just another way to get another body on board, which can help you to OTK, or maybe get an extender back so you can set up better plays. And lastly, Change Your Heart, another card that helps you break boards, play into your opponent's stuff. Just really, really cool. Unfortunately, didn't really come up at all for me, but really cool conceptually all the same. Onto the extra deck, we have the obligatory tokens. Sadly, couldn't get any of those at YCS because they didn't have a bloody booth set up or anything like that. Sad times. So we start off with Synchros, just one in German, so you can't read it. It does whatever you like, apparently. Just kidding. I'm just joking. It is Borrowed Savage Dragon. Probably have to look the text up for this for wording, because that's my life. Yeah. Not much to say about that. It just gives you an option. On to rank 4s, we just tried to pick the best ones. We got Lagia, Dolka, not much to say there. I mean, these 2 are just kind of obligatory at this point. You need to play them. So, yeah, just do it. Baguska, just a good defensive option. Again, if you're made to go first, a lot of the time this will out weird decks. And a lot of the time, if you're playing stuff like this, you're going to be playing weird rogue decks. So, just prepare for them. Abyss Dweller, good against a lot of stuff. Tornado Dragon, good back row removal and a backbreaker, board breaker card. Get you there. Zeus, since we're playing so many Exceeds, another board wipe card, really, really cool. Forces your opponent to do stuff, all of the good stuff that we like. On to Link Monsters, we have Linkaribo, just really cool way of getting rid of your Animadorn or whatever, just setting up a non-Dino monster. It's just a really cool option to do that. Pentastag to help you OTK into some boards. You can just set UCT up behind this and it's game. IP Masquerena, so you can make it and pass without being able to make anything with it. Scrap Wyvern for the scrap package. Nightmare Unicorn. Yeah, Nightmare Unicorn, not much to say there. Great off IP Masquerena if you do actually have a material on board. Topologic Trisbania, this almost saved me in a game where I was about to lose to Masquerade. My opponent skillfully flipped and ran down the timer for the last few seconds, even though I had game on board. Surprise, surprise. I was going to try and make this to then kill him off as punishment for trying to do that to me. Unfortunately, he only had one back row card. He'd done 700 damage, and this would have only done 500, but the logic was there. It's also good back row removal and stuff in general anyway, so it is good for breaking boards. Palooza, one of the few link fours you might actually make occasionally. Doesn't come up an awful lot sometimes with the scrap package you get there, but just a really good option to have. And then finally, Mech Knight, Crusader, Avramax, just another great card that's really sticky and certain decks just do not have an out to it, so it's great to have this option in here. You can also look at the likes of Access Code if you prefer. I just don't feel we get that high up enough to warrant it. We've got other ways of killing the board. This is just better for just dealing with opponents' sticky bits. And then lastly, onto our side deck. I'm pretty sure I just saw this side deck somewhere and borrowed it. I'll talk about what I would have maybe added or done differently now. We've got triple copies of Dark Hole. This is effectively another starter card. It's slightly better than Regeki in that you can just normal summon a baby if you have to, and use this to wipe the board and then go off from there into your opponent's open board. That's a really cool option. But yeah, just obviously you can pop your own stuff, which is handy. We then have triple copies of Cosmic, Cyclone. You need back row removal. There are some decks where you just auto lose. Stuff like Anti-Spell Fragrance and stuff can kill you off. This just helps deal with those quite quickly. Helps deal with weird decks like, you know, Branded and things like that. Just getting rid of their power spells and stuff they set back. And yeah, it's just a better option than Harpies. Feather Dust thrown into a lot of decks. So having triple copies of this available seems like a good option. We have triple copies of D-Barrier. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. There's a lot of decks that this hurts at the moment. So I think you have to play it for going first. Also, for going first is Solemn Judgment. Help protect your board, stop your opponent establishing theirs, and then kill them the following turn. And it also helps protect your Anti-Spell Fragrance. I felt a bit weird about playing this because it does actually hurt you quite a bit, but the logic being that if you set up your board and your opponent can't play, you're going to kill them in turn 3, and Anti-Spell is great for you at that point. There are games where you will lose to this card yourself if you are not careful, so do make sure that it's a calculated risk that you take. In terms of the side deck, what would I change? Well, not too much. I actually really wanted to put Superconductor Tyranno in. Loads of people they chuckle when I say that. But every time I play Dino, I play it. Every time I don't have it in my side deck, I will lose in time to an opponent who can just burn me with one of their cards. This gives me an option. I can just go double Evolution Pill to make sure that I don't lose in that manner. Unfortunately, every time I don't include it, I lose in time, and it would have won me the game. But every time I do include it, it's kind of lackluster, so make of that what you will. There's probably not an awful lot else I would change. Maybe consider again the Nibiru's in the main deck for something a little bit different. So just thinking quickly over the matchups I had at London, there will be a full breakdown. It'll probably be a bit more accurate in the vlog. I played 2 Sprite. I believe I played 2 Sprite, 1 Branded Despia, and then the other one was a bye. And I lost the games that I played, all of them. The 2 Sprite games, just Nibiru does nothing. Yeah, there's not really much to say about that. I couldn't play into those boards. Just couldn't do it. And then going second now, of course, they play the Smashers, the one that allows them to OTK. So they can actually play through your board relatively easily if you don't set up a really strong one. So that was unfortunate. Just one of those matchups I feel like you auto-lose. Against Branded Despia, again, they do the usual. They survive for 40 minutes. Game 1, I win quite comprehensively. Game 2, he grinds out a win in the end. There's a few minutes left on the clock going into Game 3. My logic being, I'll make him go first and I'll OTK him, and that's exactly what I intended to do. I was about to summon my UCT and then go to Battle Phase. He realised there was 30 seconds left on the clock, and that's all I needed to do was go Battle Phase and I'd won. He had a Masquerade on the field, it burnt me for 700, and I was going to try and, again, go for the OTK there. As I'm about to go Battle Phase, he goes, thinking. And then just make some kind of useless fusion plays to kill out the time, as they do. Oh, I need to read cards, all that. And by the time you've done it, you know you can't call a judge, so what can you do? One of those things, they were legitimate plays though, it's really unfortunate, but that's how it is sometimes in the game. I did then try to make Trisbania to hit back, but he only had one back row, so that is that. So unfortunately lost all those and decided to drop at that point. There wasn't really a whole lot else to do. I was clearly just going to have unfortunate matchups all day, so we called it a day. But I don't think that's necessarily a reflection on the deck, or even in fact what I did in the day. I think it was more just a bit unfortunate, apart from, again, the exception being Nibiru not being great. But there are other alternatives you can play instead. Anyway, I've definitely waffled on enough. That is it for the deck profile today. Thank you very much for coming along, guys. If you haven't already, most definitely consider hitting subscribe and maybe even the notification bell. And I will see you in the next one.